Welcome, everyone, back to another episode of the Brass Tacks Business Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Heather Robbins on. Thank you for being on today, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Heather. Heather is a doctor of physical therapy, high speed healing practitioner, and founder of the Four Leaf Clover Project. The Four Leaf Clover Project is a nonprofit organization dedicated to making alternative healthcare accessible to all. She is based in Leesburg, Virginia. Heather combines her clinical background with a deep commitment to soul-led healing, helping individuals move beyond traditional healthcare limitations toward multidimensional wellness. Through her work, Heather has witnessed firsthand how many people are turning to holistic and integrative treatments, only to find those options financially out of reach. That's where the Four Leaf Clover Project comes in. By providing financial support for those seeking care not covered by insurance, the organization is helping people reclaim their health journeys and reconnect with their inner healing power. Heather's passion lies in bridging the gap between science and soul, making healing not just possible, but empowering. So whether you're new to alternative health or already on your own journey, this conversation is about redefining what's possible when we honor the whole self. So Heather, I'm so thrilled to have you on
Yeah.
and learn more about the Four Leaf Clover Project because that is what excites me the most. But before we get into that and all the nitty gritty of the Four Leaf Clover Project, Heather, tell us just a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey, and kind of, with a background in doctor of physical therapy, how you've now kind of fallen into the Four Leaf Clover Project.
Yeah, well, gosh, there's the whole story, right? And I feel like lifetimes leading up to this. But yes, I am a Western trained doctor of physical therapy, and I practice at a tiny hospital in DC for a handful of years before I had my first child, my daughter. And then I decided to stay home. And it was really in my pregnancy with my daughter, my husband got sick. He relapsed, his cancer came back. And so I stayed home and I went PRN as a PT for a little bit, meaning like I just worked like a random weekend once a month. And then after about a year and a half, I decided to stay home completely. And my own health journey was starting with that. I started to realize I was really sick. I was already realizing I was really sick, but it was becoming more conscious. And my doctors just kept telling me, "Oh, it has to do with your daughter, like you have a newborn." And I'm like, "No, she sleeps really well. Something's not right." So anyway, I was starting on my own health journey with my husband in his own journey. And as I moved away from PT, then I found myself really guided towards energy work. And I found myself wanting to be trained. There's a whole story with this energy practitioner and my husband where I just was like, oh my God, I need to know what this is. I need to do this. It came in like hard and fast and clear. And so that's the high speed healing practitioner training and certification that I went through. And since then, gosh, that was in 2019. And since then, I had our second son, our second child, my son, and he was born in October of 2019. And during my son's pregnancy, my husband's cancer relapsed again. And there was just a lot happening. It was 2019. And so then early, 2020, everything happened there. And I want to say it was in October of 2021 then. My I wasn't practicing PT anymore. I was an energy practitioner. I was working with people distance. As a high speed healing practitioner, I can do things over Zoom. I don't have to be in person, which was lovely during that time. However, I had a very young baby and I was homeschooling my oldest for kindergarten. So I didn't really get to do a whole lot in my business. But it was in October of 2021, I believe, and so my whole journey with energy really expanded during that kind of early COVID time of being at home. We had moved from Leesburg out to Lovettsville and here in Virginia. We had land, we had space. I felt like that time was literally a time to reconnect with nature and reconnect more deeply within myself. And so the energy piece really started to become much more spiritual, and I could see how like nature was talking to me, and it's really beautiful how spirit speaks, I feel, through everything. And one day my kids and I were just outside playing in our front yard, and my husband and I had done a lot of like landscaping, revamping on that house. And because it's the country out there, we didn't do anything to get rid of the weeds. And so what ended up growing back was a ton of clovers. And so we were out playing one morning, and I looked down and I found my first ever four leaf clover. And the second I found that four leaf clover, I felt this overwhelming expansive energy. And the only way I can describe it is like from within, of abundance and prosperity and love. And I knew I was supposed to do something with it, but I'm like, with this four leaf clover, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And honestly, at that time, my husband was very sick still. And he ended up passing a year after that, pretty much. And so it was a really, really dark time in my life. I wasn't sitting there like just in joy and elation all day, every day. It was a really dark time. So in order for me to experience that through this four leaf clover, I was like, what is this? Whoa. And immediately the name the Four Leaf Clover Project came, but I had no idea what it was supposed to be. I knew it was supposed to be something of service. And initially I was like, oh, is it supposed to be for caregivers and people who are dealing with a spouse or a family member or a child or something with a disease, kind of like I was with my husband. Nothing really landed until he passed. And when he passed, it was that the duality of his loss, but in that I could feel that same abundant prosperous feeling that I felt when I found that first four leaf clover. And it was in that moment I realized, oh my gosh, I could see how our journey, we were so blessed financially that we could explore, he could explore. I explored all the things that my soul called me to, and through my healing journey I healed myself from Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. I've moved myself through a lot of physical ailments, emotional, mental issues. My husband, while he did not receive or achieve physical healing, there was a lot of soul healing that he received through this alternative exploration, I guess. And so in that moment where I could feel and see the duality of things, I chose to move towards that abundant, prosperous, let me use this to be of service path, I guess. And I could see, and we knew many people through that journey who were not financially able to continue on a path of exploration because they didn't have the money and it wasn't covered by insurance. And so it was really after he passed, it was like everything, like the puzzle pieces clicked into place and I could see it. And I was like, whoa, okay, well, let's do it.
What an amazing experience having that kind of overwhelming feeling of finding that four-leaf clover
Yeah.
and then, obviously your husband passing a year later, that's can you expand on that at all? I know it's hard to explain probably to people, but was it kind of like like a light bulb moment or just a mind shift moment, or did it not happen, until like a year later when, your husband had passed that kind of those feelings re
Well, I think so. I'm not sure. So when I found the first four leaf clover, the feeling that I felt was just so different than anything I've ever felt before. It didn't come from the four leaf clover. It came through me in connection with the four leaf clover. It came like out of my heart and it like just expanded. And I think consciously I could connect that with a way of being of service. I've always known I wanted to be of service. That's why I went into physical therapy. And even when I stopped doing physical therapy, I mean, I taught mommy and me workout classes with my daughter in a stroller, still wanting to support the community. And what's interesting, and I've had this revelation since starting the charity, is that I was working as a PT and I wasn't at the hospital for long, but I remember telling people I'm not going to be here long. And I don't know why I was telling people that. I mean, this was in 2012, like 2013, but I knew, and I don't know that I was telling them this, but I knew that I was going to be out in the community helping people. It wasn't going to be in a hospital. And I thought it would be as a physical therapist, but that's not at all the case.
Was there something about the hospital that just didn't vibe with you, or did you enjoy your time there?
No, I really loved it. There was again this like soul calling, like just this intuitive knowing that logically made no sense. But I think I was also being called to speak it because that's how we help bring things into this world. So I think I've just always meant to be doing this. But the clover piece, I think it's just what kept coming, because then after I found that first four-leaf clover, every time I went out, every time, Keith, like I would walk out and I'd look down, oh, there's a four-leaf clover. I wouldn't even have to look. There were times that, and there was a time here recently where I haven't found one in a long time, but I also haven't taken time to look. But I felt called to look down, and I could feel in my heart I wasn't attuned to that abundant feeling within. I've been moving through kind of witnessing my own feelings of lack again in certain aspects of my life. And the second I noticed that, I was able to attune to the gratitude and like the abundance within me, found four-leaf clover. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, and so I think what was coming in that year up until Tripp's passing was the realization that everybody thinks the four-leaf clover is like elusive, non-existent, can't find it. And what was coming is like, oh my gosh, if we're just attuned within the abundance within, if we feel the lack, well, then of course we're not going to see it. And that goes with everything. It goes with the magic of the universe. It goes with, if we believe the universe is out to get us, well, then that's what we see. Everything that we believe is that self-fulfilling prophecy kind of. And so to associate the four-leaf clover with abundance, when people are like, I can't ever find one, like, where are they? It's like, oh, it just feels so, it's kind of hilarious. I'd never thought about it before, but it is like perfect.
Yeah. Do you feel, Heather, prior to finding the four-leaf clover, maybe even prior to, your husband and you going through these health issues, do you feel like you guys had a pretty good mindset even prior to that? Like, because I feel like mindset is the biggest differentiator from a lot of, successful people versus, the rest of us who, yeah, like the world's out to get me. I got stuck in traffic, then I got stuck at the red light, and then I'm going to be late to work. And then just like you said, the power of the mind is so powerful. But prior to this, spiritual experience or this experience in nature happening, do you feel like you and your husband were pretty positive mindset people or abundantly thinking prior to that, or no?
No, no. And actually, it's been very interesting since his passing to really witness how fearful we were. And because we got married in 2012, and then it was like 7 months later that he was diagnosed with cancer for the first time. And we were afraid. I mean, we'd just gotten married. What does this mean? Feel like I remember us saying shortly after we got married, that old saying of like, oh, this is so great. Like, we just feel like we're waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it's the things we speak, and like it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there's so much that I've learned and I've seen, I've been shown through my own journey, with my husband's journey, with my clients and stuff, that there are things that we're holding within us physically and then within our multidimensional self that brings these experiences to us. The fact that my husband and I kept looping in his cancer coming back and just like continuing in that for 9 years. Every time I got pregnant, he'd get sick. Like, that's not a coincidence. And so I've really been shown there's just so much to learn from everything that we're experiencing. And it was my own journey that really catalyzed me into that whole world. My husband really resisted it. He did not, he kept telling me, even really until the end, like, I don't want to be doing any of this. And he really did it out of obligation and resentment. And I learned a lot from that, where I wish I had been more accepting of just his journey, and that his journey is his, and whatever he felt called to do. And I really found myself moving in that direction and not offering input and not offering my opinion on what he was wanting to choose for his own treatments. But it was me in my own health journey that really started to shift my mindset and really started to show me how important that was. But then we get into the whole idea of like shadow work, and you can't see what you can't see, and there's so many blind spots in the mind because you just don't know what you don't know.
Now you said something interesting, Heather. I just want to touch on. You said every time you got pregnant, your husband would have a relapse, and you said that's not a coincidence. What do you think? What's your rationale, or what? Why do you think that wasn't a coincidence that you would get pregnant and then he would get another relapse?
Well, so there's actually there's a handful of practitioners that do like, I forget what it's called, biodecoding. It's almost, what is it? German medicine. There's something else there to it. They're almost the same. And my husband got connected with a practitioner who, I guess, listened to his entire story. So his cancer was appendix cancer, but then by the end, it wasn't functioning like appendix cancer. So anyway, first off, this practitioner that he got connected with the biodecoding, um, how look at the body and felt experiences. It's like trapped emotions and trapped experiences in the body get trapped in certain parts of your body then. And his appendix cancer, she said, was connected with almost this like not having enough. And it started right after we got married because he had been in the army and he had a lot of money that he hadn't used from getting paid with the army that he wanted to put towards our wedding and our honeymoon. We went to Australia for our honeymoon, and he had had cancer when he was in high school. His parents back then had had the foresight to freeze his sperm. And so both of our babies are IVF babies. And so every time we did IVF, we had to spend money. And so every time he spent this large amount of money that was not in the grand scheme of our lives large. But when we moved to Lovettsville, we had put down a sizable down payment. He got sick again shortly after we moved. And so every time it was like associated financially with money, the energy of money and feeling like he didn't have enough. But then there's this whole idea. I don't know if you've heard of Louise Hayes and her Heal the Body book, but there's this whole mental emotional component with cancer, and then also with cysts or cystic cancer, which his cancer was again, not proliferating like normal appendix cancer. It was cysts all over his body. And the cysts are in her interpretation in the book. And I just find it goes hand in hand with him, like replaying an old movie, like a hurtful, painful memory, movie, felt experience kind of thing. And what was running through him. So I had the opportunity right before he passed. Well, literally, I think this is what helped him transition. Was I had this experience of being able to support him on a soul level. And I was shown that it was despair. It was this emotion of despair that had been trapped in his body, that got trapped when he was 6, when his mom got sick with cancer for the first time, that he kept replaying this old hurt because it was so painful. I mean, a 6-year-old little boy, your mom gets sick, she's not around, she's not able to nurture and nourish and support him. So he almost was like this sad, trapped little boy, but in a man's body. And this emotion, this felt experience just kept circulating. And so isn't it interesting that every time I went to become a mom, he would get sick. So that's like a very general kind of explanation because it's so much deeper but I think all of that played into it.
And through his journey and, the relapses he had, kind of getting to the more, holistic or the healing side, what were some of the things, either you with your Hashimoto's or your husband with, his cancer? Was there, what times throughout that journey did you find like, okay, the traditional, Western model like isn't working or it isn't benefiting him? And when did you try to start to implement more like holistic treatments?
Well, so it was probably in 2017. It was 20, well, so he was started to see a nutritionist probably in like 2016, 2017. She's here in the area and she's not like a typical nutritionist. She does muscle testing and her wealth of knowledge. Her name's Terry Cochran. She's over in Reston. She's amazing. And so he started with her because he had been an ultra marathoner. And when he was going through, I guess, the second round of chemo, when I was pregnant with, yeah, he had just had a really massive surgery when I was pregnant with our daughter and he wasn't recovering well. And then he went through chemo again that second time. And he just had no energy. He was really bloated. He just did not recover well from this surgery. And so he started to see Terry. And I mean, within a month of eating how she was recommending for his specific body, he was still on chemo, but he dropped all the bloat and actually was then he was able to start working out and he started working out and doing CrossFit and while still eating what was recommended specifically for his body. And then it was in 20, it was shortly after he started with her that I was heavily guided because of my Hashimoto's to do some diet work. And that really helped me. But then it was in 2018, my dad died. And I was guided to work with somebody, kind of do like a mindset, kind of spiritual, mental kind of refresh. And she was a high speed healing practitioner. And so she coupled that into to my work. And when I was working with her, I was like, oh my gosh, my husband, like this would be so great for him. And so I was talking with her kind of over Thanksgiving that year about getting him some sessions for Christmas. And it was actually Thanksgiving Day that he ended up in the hospital with gallstones or kidney stones. And he, I mean, I've seen him, I had seen him at that point go through a lot, but I had never seen him in that much pain. And I was again talking with her, this woman, that day, and I was like, I'm sorry, we're going to the hospital. I need to go. And she's like, well, I'm happy to work on him. I'm available right now if you want. And so I asked him like through his screaming as he was in the ER, and he's like, I don't care, whatever, that sounds fine. And so they gave him some pain meds, but he was still in excruciating pain. And this woman's name was Julie, and she started the session over the phone. And I was like, oh my goodness, Julie, like he's going to leave. He's going to go down for a scan or something. And she's like, it's okay, Heather. Like it doesn't matter. He doesn't need to be in the room. She's like, I don't even need the phone. And at that point, I knew nothing about energy or anything. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I was like, okay. And so they wheeled him down, probably to do a bladder scan or something, I think. And she stayed on the phone for about an hour and then she got off and he came back maybe like an hour and 20 minutes later. And he like popped off the gurney and the doctor came in and she was like, how are you? And he's like, I feel good. She's like, what? And he's like, yeah, they asked me to pee and so I did. And she's like, was it painful? He's like, no. She was like, did you see anything like in the bowl when you peed? He was like, no. He's like, I'm just really tired and I really want McDonald's. And we were not eating McDonald's at that point. So I knew he like something, but the doctor looked at him and looked at me and she's like, I'm mystified.
Wow.
She's like, I am mystified.
And so, other than the pain medication, the scan or whatever they did was not a treatment. It was just more a diagnostic test. And so he
Oh,
just
yeah.
came back and wow. So, tell me more about the high speed healing, Heather. What can you elaborate on that since it sounds like you did it and he did it? Can you
Yes. And
tell us?
I mean, I've received a lot of sessions because I became a practitioner, and that's the practitioner work that I do when I do energy work. It's similar to Reiki. Have you heard
Yeah.
of Reiki? So
Yes.
Reiki to me, because I'm a Reiki practitioner as well, but again, I work more in the high speed healing space because I feel like it's more expansive. But Reiki is where like the practitioners directing the energy either like along the meridians. I know some Reiki practitioners, and I feel like this is more in alignment a little bit with the high speed healing, but I know a lot of Reiki practitioners will not necessarily consciously direct the energy. They just let it flow and trust that the energy is going to go where it's supposed to go, and unblock things and get things working efficiently again. The high speed healing is where we work really specifically like in the field that surrounds the physical body, in your biofield. And so there is where a lot of thoughts and emotions, felt experiences, traumas, other people's emotions, we can take on other people's things. There can be, there's the whole talk of like energy vampires, but there can be attachments in our field where people are literally siphoning our energy. And so working in the field essentially just invites the information that's ready to come up into your awareness to then be released to do so. And so it's really a clearing of that field, but then it clears the mental, emotional, the spiritual body, the energetic body, and then the physical body.
I was always amazed because I have a few clients that practice Reiki, and I thought it always had to be, kind of done in person. But more recently, a client of mine said, "Oh no, I can do it over the phone, or I don't even, like you said, I don't even need to." So how does that work when you're not physically in the space as the other person? Is it just energy being transferred from like over? Can you do it to somebody in Hawaii, or like that's
Yeah.
amazing. So can
Yeah. I
you
mean,
explain that?
well, it's so first of all, a practitioner needs to always have the person's permission because you're accessing their energy. And that's really, really, really important because there are practitioners out there who are not the best. I feel like I need to say that because it's the same in every profession, right? They're not great physical therapists, not great chiropractors. We're all there.
Right, right, right.
And then, yeah, it's really just like for me, if I'm doing a high speed healing session, I am speaking with the person. Typically, I couple my energy work with like coaching work. So I've gotten their permission. Typically, it is on Zoom. And so I will have seen them already. I imagine that some people, if they do it distance and they haven't had a Zoom, maybe they'll ask for a picture just so they can kind of visualize the person, but then you just imagine their body and you just work in the space and it's the same. I mean, it's just energy. It's all when you imagine that they're in front of you or in your space, you're just squishing the time space continuum, right? Like in the quantum, you're just working in the quantum field. So.
And so the efficacy, you don't see a difference between doing it virtually versus doing it in person?
No, and really a lot of people say they like having it done distance because they can be in their own bed, they can be in their own on their own couch, like their own space. They don't have to travel, they don't have to deal with any of that. So, yeah, it's
I feel like I'm not gonna go off on a tangent here too far because I feel like I could talk to you for an hour just about energy work. But like typically for your clients, since you are an energy practitioner, do you feel like is that something that they're doing regularly? Like what's the frequency of some and obviously it's different for everybody, right? But like
it is.
how does that typically work?
Well, so it is different for everybody. And it's really so one of the reasons I also love doing it over Zoom is I'll record it. And so then the healing frequencies are recorded in the recording. So then they can essentially, like if we're not meeting in person, they can listen to those recordings and receive those healing frequencies every day if they want. Now with energy work, it's you're bringing up a lot. I mean, there's a lot coming to light. That's where I was kind of alluding to the blind spots with mindset. Like it's not as easy as that because sometimes there's really deep-seated beliefs that have been passed down generationally. And so we're not just undoing like a mindset. We are literally unraveling belief systems that we have as a collective operated from. And so emotions come up, traumas and things that we've experienced, felt experiences that we have not fully felt that feel traumatic. There's so much that needs to be unpacked, and then the energy needs to integrate. And so typically, like I will say with high speed healing, I'll tell a client, if we're working together in person, the integration period can go anywhere from 24 to like 72 hours, depending on things that are coming up. And it's not me that's directing that. It's not even the person's ego. It's like soul. Whatever is meant to come up at that moment is what's meant to come up. It's not something that I'm doing or the other person is doing. It just is what comes through after the session. And so some people can be really fatigued. They kind of go through that like they almost have those herxing symptoms, like when people are detoxing, because they're detoxing a lot of really heavy, dense belief systems, emotion, thought patterns. I mean, all of this stuff. Some people will be really energized after a high speed healing session, and they may want to do a session like that next day. But some people may need to wait. I've personally I've gone through phases where I've done the recordings every day because I've just felt like there's a lot that needs to come and I'm integrating it quick enough that I can do that. It's really about empowering the client and the patient to listen to themselves. And that's one of the reasons I really love the energy work because it's not, physical therapy. Oh, you need to do it this many times. Like it's been so regimented that it's like, if you don't, then you're going to fail. It's like, no, with this, listen to yourself. Let's start listening to yourself again.
So the energy work definitely benefited you, benefited your husband. Were there any other alternative therapies or modalities that you or your husband went through during his time in cancer or his relapses that you showed a huge benefit for him?
Well, for him, I mean, we got into working with like shamans and again, like the diet work with Terry was profound for him and for me and for our kids. I mean, he did some hyperbaric chamber work, which his actually was ended up being covered by insurance because of some radiation that he had done. And so, I mean, he didn't get too much into, but I was heavily guided to get into a lot of the chakra work and like the Eastern. So like sound healing and all of that I found so powerful. And he did some work with some like sound healers, but that wasn't really where he gravitated towards. Again, he really received a lot of healing, but he fought it kicking and screaming.
At least you were there to push him. So that's
Yeah, I mean, he received everything he was meant to.
and going through that journey, because I know this is kind of what led into the Four Leaf Clover Project. What do you feel was like, some of the biggest misconceptions people would have it, either if you're telling friends or family that, you or your husband were doing this energy work or the sound healing or even the nutrition and the diet. Did you get a lot of, kind of kickback, or did you get a lot of people that were skeptical?
It's really interesting because, again, a lot of people they tried the nutritionist, but they didn't really stick with it as much as my husband or I did. Um, and I think like his friends listened and just allowed for him to speak and explore. Definitely, I had people as I started moving into more of my own journey with my own like energy business. I found a lot of people had pushback with some of the spiritual things because they were more religious. And it was really interesting because own journey started religious, and I was very much recognizing I needed God. My husband was sick. I had young kids, like, but then as it I feel expanded more into the spiritual piece, I found there wasn't this acceptance of, wow, okay, like this is where you're going, or this is what you've been called to experience, and which is fine. I really was able to see it and be like, it's okay. Like, I don't need you to honor me. I'm honoring myself, and I can honor you in that. But that was a really interesting, because I had never experienced that before. That was a really interesting kind of pushback of like people not seeing or being open to the benefit of it because of the religious piece.
Do you feel like that helped your, relationship with God, or, having the other spiritual piece and the energy work? Do you feel like it, kind of enhanced your religious faith?
Yes, my faith was heavily tested with my journey, and there was a time, I was listening to the Christian station here because I needed to fill my head with good things.
How about from any of his practitioners or any of your practitioners? When you're saying you're doing some, more natural healing or some energy work or anything else like that, some of the
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Pushback from doctors. Yes. Now his oncologist, he had two. The second one that he ended up with was supportive, but very skeptical and not as supportive as I feel he deserved. Just from the sense of, again, like anything, man, fuck, give it a fucking try, and let's believe that it'll fucking do something, rather than like, really? But you're going to continue to push this shit that like does nothing but hurt him and cause all of these side effects, and then make him have to go do all these things that then create the hole in his esophagus that gives him pneumonia and he fucking dies from. Fuck you. Like, what the fuck? Sure, go try some sound healing that doesn't, do anything but just maybe like bring up an emotion that God forbid you feel. And for me, like when I first started to go see the nutritionist, Terry, I actually, that same day I went to, I was going to say, I forget the name of this doctor because it's been so many years since I've seen it, but an endocrinologist for my thyroid. I was taking my thyroid medicine religiously because I was so tired, and somebody had recommended finally that I go see a nutritionist. And I was like, well, my husband's already seeing this person, so I'm going to go there. And I had an appointment with her that afternoon. So I went to this endocrinologist, and my numbers were so bad. I don't remember what they were, but she wanted to increase my thyroid meds more. And she looked at my hands. Oh, they're so dry. And I'm like, okay, I wash my hands all the time. I have a young baby. Like, I don't understand how like this can only be because my thyroid. And I was telling her I'm going to go see this nutritionist. I heard like, changing diet can be really good for it. Well, why don't you just start like a food diary? And I was like, I feel like shit all the time. Like, I don't know what's what. How am I going to keep a food diary when I feel like crap all the time? Everything makes me feel like crap. What is one thing? And she just kind of looked at me. I was like, no, like I need help. I need support. And I was actually trying to get pregnant, but my thyroid numbers were so bad. We were talking about having our second baby, and I left that office and just bawled because she wasn't supportive at all. And I was just prayed, and I was like, okay, God, like just show me I'm on the right path. Like just put me on the right path. And I just said, okay, like right now is not the time that we'll have our second baby, and that's okay if that time ever comes. And the second I walked into Terry's office, so this is like where I really started to see that God speaks and spirit speaks in so many different ways through each of us, and then like in everything in the world, in the universe. Where I walked into Terry's office, it was December. So I had my winter coat on and I took it off. And she was like, oh, you have a feather on your shoulder. And I was like, oh, my coat must be shedding it. And she's like, oh, I just read somewhere that when you find a feather, it's an angel like telling you that, you're being looked after. And I just started bawling. And I was like, I just needed to know that I'm on the right path. I'm like, I just prayed that literally like hours ago. And now, like, my kids and I, we collect feathers everywhere we, when we find them, we have a little like feather jar. And so, yeah, my entire journey has expanded my trust in God, my belief in the divine, my connection, my faith, my ability to walk in that unshakably. And it has taken me away from religion because I needed magic and I needed just like to see God everywhere, not just in a church or in the Bible. And so that's that's where I'm found.
Do you have any advice for anybody who's maybe tentative to do energy work or, other types of healing because they feel like it might be, against what God wants or against their religious faith? What advice would you have for anybody who's listening?
I would say that there's always fear in the unknown, and that the voice that is loudest is typically fear. And it is typically telling us to move away from the unknown because it wants to keep us safe. And if we are feeling an inkling to explore something, that is the expansion our soul is desiring. And the soul is what is in alignment with God, not the fear. But it needs to be a decision that's made from an empowered place and not from a place of fear. That's definitely, my husband and I made many decisions from a place of fear. And I feel like that created a lot of our problems. And so anytime we can recognize that voice of fear, whatever it is, sometimes it's not, I would argue that the voice of fear is not the truth of us. It's not our voice. It's society's voice that tells us we should be doing something. Anything with a should in it. Like I heard somebody say a while ago, like, why are you shitting all over yourself? It's like, yeah, why am I doing that? Like, that's judgment. It's not truth. And so anytime I notice this, like, oh, I should do this, I'm like, that's the exact thing I'm not gonna do. It's like what I think now, I recognize. And yeah, it's just it needs to be something that while yes, there may be fear in the unknown, recognizing within, am I listening to the voice of fear, or am I listening to the intuitive call that's very quiet and very calm, and it doesn't ever go away.
It's so amazing how that sense of fear is so intertwined in just everything, the media, the society, even just like I was telling you before, Jasmine's pregnant, and like even just our friends, like, oh, how is she doing with the heat? Or like, oh, how is she holding up? And I'm like, she's doing fine. Like, she's handling the heat like we're all handling the heat, like, and but there's just always a sense of fear, like, we've been having babies for millions of years, but like, oh, she's pregnant, and all of a sudden now it's like, it's like a diagnosis, it's like a disease, versus like, no, it should be it's life. We are creating life, and that's just like one example. But I also find it in, medicine as well. People are constantly, coming from a place of fear. So I appreciate you, Heather, telling us all of the experience of you and your husband. But before we come to a conclusion, I do want to touch on the Four Leaf Clover Project, because I think your guys' mission and vision is just absolutely amazing. We might need to just have a second hold podcast just on energy work and mindset, because we've now been talking for almost an hour, and I'm like, oh my goodness, don't forget about the Four Leaf Clover Project. So I think it's an amazing charity that you have started. And can you tell us more about it? Kind of just the whole, obviously it was spawned out of, your husband and your experience with his, medical journey, but kind of can you explain more about the Four Leaf Clover Project and kind of what you guys are doing with that now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So really, yes, it came from our journey together. It's really like my witnessing of what is needed and how I've always been called to serve, that there's a hole. There is a huge gap in how so many of us are wanting to move in our own health and well-being, and not all of us are financially able to explore the routes that and the paths that could bring more of this multidimensional mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic, and then physical healing, because our healthcare system focuses so much on the physical. Now there's a lot with the mental, and I mean, there's even now I'm seeing that some alternative things are now approved by insurance, like some of the sound healing, but it's not as accessible as everything in Western medicine. And, if my husband and I had known that this whole world existed back when he was first diagnosed, I don't know that we would have entered that situation of making all the decisions that he had to make, and then I had to make. I don't know that we would have entered all of that with the fear that we had, because the label of cancer and any label, a diagnosis, it's so heavy. It's an identity. I have this. And so we take it on, and it is, then we become part of this larger system, and it's all just so heavy and dense. And yes, some people receive healing. And yes, like Western medicine, I think we can all agree, sometimes is incredibly important, right? We have a car accident, we need to go to the ER. Like there are things that it's needed for. But then there's all of these other things that we're treating, when, oh my gosh, if we just listened to our bodies and we were just empowered to listen to the body and to the soul, to our intuition, to our own voice, rather than giving our power away to everybody else who can just make the decisions for us. Oh, they're a doctor, I'll just follow them. We don't, we can't ask questions. Or if we do, why are you asking that? Why do you want to do that? It's a whole system that shames when, yeah, I'm being called, I want to like explore this and add this into my regimen. um and it's a system that really, I mean, my husband, he needed to take his power back, and he was in the hospital, like I want to say like a month before he passed. And his doctor, like they were doing scans and all these things, and his doctor was in there. I wasn't there, but my husband told me that his oncologist was there and was talking about these minuscule cells that could potentially be. And my husband finally took his power back and was like, you need to fucking stop. You need to stop the fear mongering. We have no idea what this is going to be. When at the beginning of his journey, everything the doctor said, he just took on as truth, and it weighed him down and scared him. And I mean, I was right there too. But I mean, when he told me that, I was like, yeah, take your fucking power back. Yes.
But I think that's so good for people to hear, Heather, because for everyone that's listening, we are not going after, doctors per se. Like you said earlier, there are good doctors and there are bad doctors, but it is not the doctor's fault, you guys. So everyone that's listening, we're not going after medical doctors or Western medicine. It is the system that is broken. It is the way we are trained, and it is the way that, just like you said, Heather, they just instill that fear, and it's done on purpose. Like when you get to the hospital, they put you in a gown. Like, why do I need to be in a gown if I don't even want to get into that
Yeah,
whole thing,
it's a
because
whole, other thing.
I'll get so off track. But like, I want to be very clear to all our listeners, we are not going after the doctors, because most of them, they mean well, right? But it is the system around that, whether it's our hospital system or our healthcare system, that I feel like is broken and has that consistent, fear basis to scare everyone.
Yeah. So it's just about empowering, because we are not all the same. And so to have gone into my husband's cancer journey, treating him the same way they treat everybody with appendix cancer, is mean, like mind blowing to me. He had this whole part of him that's different from everybody else. So, like, why are we not supporting that and supporting the multidimensional being that he is, that you are, that I am, that we all are? And like, what is your journey brought you? Like, what is it that brought you here to this moment with this showing up in the physical? It's not a coincidence. And there are things that we all can do without being under the care of a doctor that is within our power. And yes, sometimes we need practitioners and we need the doctors and we need somebody like supporting us because it's very hard to do it on our own. But yeah, the charity is just about making it possible for anybody that really feels called. And soul-led healing, I mean, I was just talking with somebody yesterday, it's everything. It's, somebody wants to go on a retreat, somebody wants to start a business and they want to have pictures taken and, like they can't afford the pictures. I mean, it's anything because like our souls are guiding us into our lives. And like healing isn't just medical and it isn't just physical, it's every avenue possible. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their mind around. I think the charity is still pretty elusive to people because they don't understand it and they equate it to my husband. It's not just for cancer patients. And I've had his blessing to try to separate it because it's not about him. Because he really, like I've said, he really did like poo-poo a lot of this. And he just, even though he saw benefit, he didn't want to do that work. He wasn't really called there. He was still called into a lot of the Western medicine, and that's okay. That was his journey. But this is really about wherever your soul is calling you. A lot of us will not follow because of that financial burden. And so to say, hey, we've got you. Like let's take that off the plate.
So for the people that are listening that may be interested in getting involved with the Four Leaf, like I know, Heather, you have a lot of or practitioners that you work with. What does that look like for somebody who might be interested in being a part of the journey with the Four Leaf Clover Project? Like how would they go about doing that?
Well, so we have our Bedrock initiative for people who maybe they're really big supporters of alternative healthcare, and they want to essentially sponsor other people's ability to receive this kind of care and support. They can become a monthly donor. And then if they become a monthly donor, which we're calling a collective contributor, then they can receive discounts and maybe coupons to potentially work with our nurturers and collaborators. And so one of the big things that I felt was really important was if somebody came to the charity and they were like, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what. If I didn't have a community of practitioners and businesses to refer them to, then I wouldn't quite know how to support them. Some people will come to the charity and be like, I want to work with Dr. Keith, but I can't afford him. Oh, okay, well, great. Like, so a business and a practitioner doesn't have to be in our network community, but the network community, if you're a practitioner, an alternative practitioner, or an alternative business owner, if you wanted to be in the network community is really kind of twofold. It's one, to be that kind of referral base where if somebody comes and they don't know who to work with, I can talk with them, get an idea of where they are in their journey. Oh, Dr. Keith would be so great for you. Like, let's get you connected with him. We can also kind of package practitioners together or businesses together. So it's like somebody's coming, then again, we're supporting the multidimensional being. But then what I found in my own journey is so many of the practitioners I worked with, even here in our area, they didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like as practitioners, we're working in our own little silos. And I'm like, we just like, if we could just bring everybody, like get a community where then it's like, oh, I'm as a practitioner, I'm working with somebody. I know I'm not the end all be all. Let me refer you to Dr. Keith because he can support you here in a way that I can't. I know you. We're in the community together. I know you. I can refer somebody. But also, if we are kind of packaged together and working with somebody, then we have, through that person's consent, obviously, the ability as practitioners to communicate to each other about the client, which seems like so amazing. But I'm laughing because we don't do it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
nothing there that allows for even doctors in Western medicine to communicate like that. And then that this community of nurturers and collaborators, I see it being then a place for us as practitioners to come together and to learn and grow from each other, so that we can then take what we're learning and take it into our communities, take it into our practices. And so it's really, and that's really just started in the last couple of months, bringing on nurturers and collaborators. And I mean, the sky's the limit with that. So if you're interested in that, like you just have to go to the website, fill out an application. There is that process. And then we do an interview and then the board votes. And really, I feel if anybody is feeling guided to this part of it, then there's a resonance and it'll be a no-brainer. I don't think we're going to attract people who are not in alignment.
For sure. And then people that are looking for actual treatment, like if they, there's those resources as well.
Yes. So we have a prosperity fund and you just need to fill out the kind of, it's not an application, it's just a form that gives us an idea of your journey, who you are, what you're looking for. Again, somebody may come and maybe you have a practitioner or you have a retreat or you have a modality that you want. The form just helps you specify that. If you're coming to us, you need support, but you're not quite sure where to go or what to do, the form will, allow for you to answer that as well. And that comes to me. I mean, right now it's really just me and the board, which is lovely. And then we'll schedule a little interview. It's not an interview. It's just a way for me to get to know you and really get a better sense of where you are in your journey, really what you're looking for. And then we can either make recommendations first from our network community, or if somebody is not in the community, like we'll still work with them. That was another really big thing is like, if somebody, a practitioner or a business is not in the charities network, we will still support somebody to work with them as long as they're a real person, as
Sure.
long as they're a legitimate business.
So
So
it's
yeah.
just really about finding people, whatever means necessary, wherever they can find the help they need. You guys have a good referral network of those practitioners.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And we're looking to grow that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Do you have anything coming up? Any events coming up? Anything we can tell? Obviously, you mentioned people can go to the website if they're interested. Anything in the future coming up? Any events or anything like that we can tell people about?
I had plans for some things in the fall, but those are on the back burner right now. I am looking here probably in July to launch a challenge through our Instagram. It's more just meant to be a way to get the name out. And so, this podcast is great for that. And also just kind of empowering people to take their power back. So that challenge will be coming here in July, and another community building initiative probably in the fall called Pennies for Prosperity. But our main fundraiser has been a gala event, and we just had it in February this year. So I see it being in the fall, not in the fall, in the spring next year, but that date is not set yet. So if they want to follow us on Instagram, we have an Eventbrite to stay up to date on events, or they can fill out the contact form and stay in touch.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on, Heather. All of you that are listening, I just love the whole mission and vision behind the Four Leaf Clover Project. Heather, I love that you guys just believe in the universal laws of abundance and giving and receiving, because I think that's so important for not only, practitioners, but also just everyone to kind of have that mindset and that belief. So please check out the Four Leaf Clover Project if you are listening. Heather, what's the Instagram? If people can find you on Instagram, do you know the handle?
Yeah, it's just at the Four Leaf Clover Project.
Awesome. Check them out on Instagram. The challenge is coming up next month. And yeah, awesome. Thank you, Heather, so much for being on. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I
Absolutely.
appreciate
Have
it.
a great day.